So the first topic that we are going to talk about today is Kerby Joseph. Now, I think all of us as Lions fans love Kerby Joseph, but you would think that PFF loves Kerby Joseph too because of the way that they've been ranking him and doing all of these things. But they recently put out a list of the top 32 safeties. Now, was Kerby Joseph on that list? Let's find out. Spoiler alert, he was not. Kerby Joseph was not on that list. So before I get into what I think about it, we're going to get into what Doug Farrar thinks. Now, if you don't know who Doug Farrar is, he's the NFL editor for USA Today Sports Media Group, and he is a voter. He is a voter for the MVP and All-Pro. Now, what he said in a tweet about Kerby Joseph, he said that the Lions tasked safety Kerby Joseph with a lot of deep third responsibilities is because he can move smoothly to either boundary, and his anticipation for the ball is top notch. 833 snaps at high safety last season, 9th most in the league. He was quoted as saying, that's when last year he had 1 tackle for loss, 81 solo tackles, 10 stops, that means run stops, and 1 quarterback pressure. In coverage, where his value was most readily apparent, Joseph allowed 34 catches on 60 targets for 512 yards, 245 yards after the catch, no touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 13 pass breakups, and an opponent passer rating of 57.1.
Wow.
That sounds like a top safety to me. What do you think, Will?
Absolutely. Just to kind of touch on the deep third, who was that, Farrar?
Doug Farrar, yes.
Yeah. So to touch on the deep third responsibility for safeties, typically what they're trying to do there is cloud a dominant wide receiver. And as we know, the Lions went up a few dominant wide receivers last year, Justin Jefferson towards the tail end of the season, but they had a few opportunities to go up against CeeDee Lamb. They went up against too. I mean, he crushed him. But typically you've got, a safety running the deep third, trying to cloud, a dominant wide receiver. And then the cornerbacks are trying to jam and then sink at the line of scrimmage and really responsible for everything underneath, which clearly the Lions got eaten alive underneath last season. Everything over the middle was wide open. So it's interesting that his stats were that good. Did you say 57.1% passer rating against?
Yes, I did.
And no touchdowns?
None at all.
That's insane. And you said that he's also not in the top 32 by PFF.
He is not.
That's completely nuts to me.
But
anyway, carry on.
The
yeah.
crazier thing about that situation is that those stats came from PFF.
So hold on. They put out their own stats.
Yeah.
Obviously of what Kerby Joseph did for the entire season. Mm-hmm. I hope that we have something that kind of tells us where he kind of stacks up against some of these other guys, but that sounds like extremely good stats. So is this free safety or all safeties that they're talking about here?
It's just all safeties. They said the top 32 safeties in the league.
Yeah, and really there's 64, right? I mean, not everybody runs a single high safety, but you've got 64 safeties free and strong. But if they really want to go top 32, they're just calling out who the best safety is. I mean, that's kind of convoluted too, isn't it? I mean, you kind of need 2 safeties on a team to do different things, but Kerby should be there. I mean, I wouldn't say that, like, if you want my true opinion, I wouldn't say that he's a top 10 or a top 15. I mean, I think that he made some big mistakes, but I also think that he was a product of the cornerbacks. I think that, we had a big problem with the cornerback room, and, that bleeds into the safeties, just like it causes issues for the defensive line. But
yeah. So there were a lot of plays where, and Dan Campbell spoke to this in a recent press conference when he was talking about how there were guys just kind of not doing their jobs and other guys having to compensate for them or overcompensate. And it's the same issue that we had the year prior. Remember when we started 1-6 and the defensive scheme had to be, what did they call it? Simplified.
Yep.
Right. And that's because a lot of guys were out of position, not doing their jobs. And then the other guys that were kind of compensating for them weren't trusting them, because why would you trust a person when you have to do his job for him? Right. So that was the issue. And they had to simplify that. And there was a little bit of that last year, especially with Kerby Joseph. I mean, you see his stats, but he was in plays where you saw him out of position or things of that nature. Well, Cam Sutton was getting cooked. Jerry Jacobs was getting cooked. Kendall Vildor was getting cooked. Like, people were getting cooked and they were letting up on their assignments. So he had to kind of, jump in there for other people. But Zoltan Buday of PFF. Now, PFF has a lot of contributors, and we will call them offenders. They have a lot of offenders. Zoltan Buday apparently is one of them. He recently ranked the top 32 safeties in the NFL, and Joseph is nowhere to be found on the list. Was it a snub or was it just sheer oversight? Now, I don't understand how you could have an oversight when you are the one that compiled the stats.
Look, I think the PFF is great at what they do with stats. I think that they're great at putting together all of the, different key performance indicators and the metrics and the statistics and, all of the information that people like myself love to consume. I think that the problem that they're having is when they try to convey their take, right? That, what they believe about these players, they seem to forget that they just put this information together. And I don't want to call it like a big conspiracy or anything like that, but maybe there's something going on here where PFF is just full of what. There's been a reason why, people like Aaron Rodgers and others at the Pat McAfee show have kind of called out PFF and pretty much said that they suck. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other, but I'll say this: if you're putting these stats together and then you come up with some cockamamie ranking system that totally goes against the stats you just put together, I think that's a problem.
I want to just take a look at some of the PFF top safeties, and we're going to compare those people to Kerby Joseph. All right. So we will start from the top 10. We will start with number 10. It was Tyrann Mathieu. Tyrann Mathieu of the New Orleans Saints. His 2023 season, he had 75 tackles. Kerby Joseph had 82. Tyrann Mathieu had 4 interceptions. So did Kerby Joseph. Tyrann Mathieu had 9 passes defensed, and Kerby Joseph had 11 passes defensed. Now, on stats alone, who's the better safety?
I mean, stats alone, Kerby had, 7 more tackles, 2 more passes defense. I mean, if you were to base it just on stats, obviously Kerby has an edge.
Yeah.
I got
PFF doing what they do. We have to base it on the stats. Yeah.
And just so, people can see here, there's the graphic. I don't know who put the graphic up, but I think it's a PFF graphic.
Yep.
That's what they put up. So, if that's what they believed in, then how did they put Kerby outside of the top 32? It doesn't make any sense.
No idea. So let's move on to the number 6 safety. The number 6 safety is Jevon Holland. Jevon Holland had 74 tackles to Kerby's 82. He had 1 interception to Kerby's 4, and he had 4 passes defense to Kerby's 11.
Okay. And he was the number 6 safety ranked?
He is the number 6 safety in PFS ranking.
Well, that's that doesn't make any sense, does it? Is he getting screwed over because the corners were so bad? You know what I mean?
But I don't know how, because his stats are excellent. And a lot of his stats did come with him doing his responsibility, and a lot of his stats did come with him making up for other people. So if you're covering for someone else at a somewhat high level, I don't understand how that could allow you to be penalized. We are going to now break down the number 2 PFF ranked safety. Now, this person has 81 tackles, and we know Kerby Joseph has 82. This person has 4 interceptions, and we know Kerby Joseph also has 4. This person had a whopping 13 passes defensed, and Kerby Joseph had 11. Now, if you said that this is the number 2 safety, and Kerby Joseph has 1 more tackle, the same amount of interceptions, and 2 less passes defense, where would you say, just based off of understanding what I just said, the number 2 safety, without any other context, where would you say Kerby Joseph lands after stacking up this almost identically well to the number 2 safety?
He's got to be right there. According to stats, right, without any eye test, if you're just looking at stats, and this gentleman is number 2, and if there was nobody better than Kerby Joseph between 2 and 4, then wouldn't he be number 3?
Yeah.
You would think.
Logic dictates that that's where he should be. So go ahead and put up the graphic, and we can see who this young man is.
The guy that I was hoping the Lions were going to pick up a couple of seasons ago in the draft, Kyle Hamilton, as you can see right there.
Now, for all of you football fans, you know who Kyle Hamilton is. Kyle Hamilton is a beast. He's a monster. He's all of the things that you would expect in a Baltimore Ravens safety. I'm not going to compare him to Ed Reed or anything of that nature, but Baltimore, they just know secondaries. They know DBs. They know linebackers. Hell, they know defensive ends, right? So Baltimore, let's amend that. Baltimore knows defense, right? The Baltimore Ravens know defense, and that has always been a staple of Baltimore. So again, I don't know. I'm clueless. I haven't seen Zoltan defend himself. Now there's another guy on PFF, and we'll talk about him later. I've seen him try to defend himself, but he just seemed to dig a deeper hole. So what do you think overall about Kerby Joseph not being on this list of top 32 safeties after seeing how he stacks up against some of the top ones on the list.
All right, so this is where I'm a mixed bag, because statistically speaking, Kerby Joseph is obviously up there in the top, 5 at least, but literally the top 3-4 safeties in the league. I think from the eye test, though, I think that's where we have a problem. Now, the one stat that I don't have, up here right now to compare against is how many snaps did he play compared to these other guys. I'm taking a look back here. So he played 833 snaps last season at, high safety.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably, 85% of the defensive snaps. That's pretty darn good. So you can't say that it's not for a lack of snaps. You can't say it's for a lack of, not being on the field. His statistics are good. I think that the problem that he's having with some of these other analysts is it's the Detroit Lions. And I don't care how good the Lions are. They are not going to give them any credit. Matter of fact, today, and I don't know if we'll talk about this later, but like today, something popped up while we were talking backstage. And I'm like, I can't believe this guy is giving, this individual credit. Like, it blew my mind that one of the guys that has been so inflammatory against the Lions was actually giving the Lions some credit today. So I don't know, man. From the realistic side of this, when I give Kerby the eye test, I think that he still has a lot more work to do. I think that he's still a little suspect. Even though his passing statistics were pretty good, my biggest concern for him was honestly instincts. And I know that that's a big thing that we've talked about the last couple of shows, this week. Instinctually, I feel like he fails at times. I think that there's more to him, though. I think that the Lions can get more out of him. Absolutely. I think that he can become a better player. And I think that this year he's going to be a much better player with the revamped cornerback room, Carlton Davis, Amik Robertson, Terrion Arnold, Ennis Rakestraw. I mean, you got some powerhouse players now that are going to help him. And I think that that's the biggest key to this, is having competent players around him so that he can play better. If he had the same exact stats as the rest of these guys this season, and our pass defense is not ranked in the trash, and we're up in the top 15 of the league, then you can't leave him out of the top 5. So I'm 50-50. Like I said, I'm a mixed bag. I mean, the eye test, I feel like there's some improvement there. The statistics, I mean, they don't lie. That's the one thing about stats, is they don't lie. It's like math, it just doesn't lie. So I guess that's where I'm at.
Well, they say that men lie, women lie, and numbers don't, but apparently numbers also lie. So everybody lies.
Yeah.
So look, what I think about Kerby Joseph, man, is that, Jim O'Neill said earlier this week that Kerby Joseph is the kind of guy that makes it scary to go over the middle. Obviously, we know he has excellent ball skills. This is how he became Aaron Rodgers' father. He would pick him off. He was the only, DB to intercept Aaron Rodgers twice in the same game. Something like that. I think he picked him off like 3 times that season. It was just nuts. It was nuts. He absolutely owned Aaron Rodgers, and he sent him packing. Pun intended, no pun intended. You guys be the judge. He sent him packing. He sent him out of the NFC North all the way to do ayahuasca in New York. But that's what we have on Kerby Joseph.